the result is that dealing with the point often mobilizes the resource of negation. What pure logic shows is that the total statement that will then be under the sign of the no will be classical, even if the general negotiation surrounding the point can very legitimately be intuitionistic or even paraconsistent. In love, art, politics, and science, strategy envelopes the differential connections between the negations in a context that is usually intuitionistic and the often paraconsistent temptations. Yes, the logic of temptation is paraconsistent because the logic of temptation is finally maybe I can do that and continue to do the other thing. It's not possible to do the two. But doing the two is a paraconsistent context. And it's a great form of temptation. Temptation is rarely, I must absolutely destroy the first possibility and to have an absolute choice for the second possibility. Temptation is more oblique. The true temptation is the temptation to do the two things. The two things. To accept to be in P and also for a part in not P. For example, a big part of P, but a small part of non-P too. That is a temptation. The temptation. And so, and a point in the procedure of law of art, politics, and science, it's very often to resist the temptation. To resist the temptation. Not for moral reasons, not because temptation is a bad thing, but only because it's the temptation finally to destroy the process itself. So, strategically, you must often and practically always have relationship to the different logical context. The process of creation is classical, but it is in a world which is intuitionistic and with paraconsistent temptation. And the strategic negotiation of all that is of complex nature. But sometimes there is a key tactical moment represented by a point. And the point recalls a certain precedence of classicism, the priority of classicism, since it is a question of maintaining the possibility of the new affirmation by effectively rejecting the temptation of the easy choice of a paraconsistent situation. The world and its infinite differences are governed by intuitionistic negation. Indifference, opposition, temptation, which must be constantly defeated and destroyed, evoke paraconsistent negation. But at the point of decision, classical negation carries the day, whatever the logical context may be. It is truly here when a theorem of pure logic comes to the rescue of desire and decision that exists that we can name a true life. A true life. When the logic itself is inside the desire of a true decision. And when we have an idea of what is a true life, we can also say that philosophy exists. And so I say here, as a lucid conclusion, philosophy exists. Thank you.
Why have you not started with that? You know? Why did we need all this going through all this? What about the logic of Gelassenheit, of letting go? Is it a classical logic? You know, in Heidegger, this verbinden, this term verbinden, letting go like a pain is less and less and less. You don't make a decision of it, it's disappearing something. That is what we do for most of our life decision. It's not actually to decide, but allow it to disappear something. How would this fit in your logic? Is that your weakest logic?
I think the question of disappearing, of disappearance, of extenuation, something like that, is a question, a typical question of intuitionistic context. Because the classical context is under the domination of the number two. It's the structuration of the process of existence under the number two, yes or no, to decide, and so on. But in fact, the world, the experience, the existential experience of the world is not under that sort of context. Is an intuitionistic context with reduction possibility, a great number of possibility, and we have the obligation of reducing more and more the scope of possibilities to find finally a direction and orientation across the different possibilities. And so I think that existential analysis, more generally, is exploration of the consequences of intuitionistic context. And I think it's only when we have the question of vital decision in the, for example, in the fascist context, where Heidegger was sensible, la décision résolue, that we find something of classical nature. And it is why I explain in the class, first, that classical logic is certainly the context for decision, but only if this decision incorporates in some sense the intuitionistic figure of the world itself. And so the true dialectical conception lies not in the choice of one type of negation, but in the new articulation of the three forms of logic. But in the last century, we have a war between intuitionistic conception as a reformist vision of the world and classical conception, which is radical. But radicality can be also the possibility of a disaster.
You would like disaster. University of disaster, that is what we are here.
No,
but not this disaster.